dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Andrew back on Liberty Nation Radio. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we're having a conversation with longtime host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner. Tim, thanks for coming in.
Oh, Mark, it's so much fun. Thank you for inviting me.
So I've got the question for you. Is it too soon to be talking about 2028? Because this is all that everybody in my acquaintance and friend group and family, they know how much I obsess over politics. And they're all asking me, what's going to happen in 2028? Who's going to be running? Who's on the Democrat side? Who's on the Republicans? Is it going to be J.D. Vance? And if so, who's going to be his running mate? And so I think about these things constantly, and I don't really have a choice because, fortunately, I have a family that loves discussing politics. So
that's a lucky break for you.
It really, for me, it is because, otherwise I'd just be sat alone by myself talking on the computer. Very sad. But so I want to talk about who are the likely contenders for 2028, what kind of trials and tribulations they're going to have, and what kind of hoops they're going to have to jump through, depending on what happens between now and the run up to the 2028 election. And let's start, if you don't mind, let's start with what's happening with the Democratic Party, because as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Tim, they appear to be somewhat leaderless at the moment, which leaves a space, and some might say a vacuum, which is dragging powerful figures within the party, many with national name recognition, towards the top spot. So give me your view from 10,000 feet or 30,000 feet with inflation.
Well, that's
my favorite.
Yeah. I'd say the 2028 presidential election will be typical in the sense that things will kick into high gear the day after the midterm elections.
Sure.
Right now, there's so much focus on the midterms that, who might be the standard bearer for the Democrats has not even remotely been clarified. I mean, right now, there's nobody, essentially. I mean, Kamala Harris sounds like she's going to run for governor of California, and she would be wise to stay away from the presidential race unless she wants the same result as last time. You've got your moderate governors, such as Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Andy Beshear in Kentucky. These are relatively centrist Democrats, but there's absolutely no clarity at all about where the Democrats might head. And it's pretty unusual to be, I say this late, it's only 6 months after Donald Trump took office. But usually by now there are rumblings about certain individuals. There haven't been such rumblings because the Democratic Party is in such a shambles that it's all they can do just to get from 1 week to the next with one Trump victory after another. I mean, Trump is just running circles around them, and there's nothing they can do, even as their base demands that they do more to stop Trump, or they don't have control of anything. They don't have the control of the Senate, the House, or the White House. So there's very limited things that they can do. On the Republican side, I think it's a little clearer, maybe quite a bit clearer. I think it's a safe assumption that J.D. Vance will be in the running and probably be the default front runner for 2028. Some of that will depend on what happens in the remainder of the Trump presidency. But I think it's pretty clear, too, that probably Marco Rubio has not gotten his presidential ambitions out of his system, even though, Trump laid waste to him in 2016, but that was a long time ago. And Rubio is still young. And you would think that he would be, a serious consideration. Now, whether you had someone, a crossover candidate like a Tulsi Gabbard, who once ran for president as a Democrat, Would you even get Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for example? I mean, I think all things are possible here because the Republicans have, an open road ahead of them, whereas the Democrats see nothing but roadblocks. But I think it's going to be very hard to bring this into focus before we see what happens in the 2026 midterms, which are still, of course, about 15 months away.
Yes, you're probably right there. It is worth talking about some issues that are not really going to go away. And on the Democrat side here, it seems to me that Josh Shapiro he's the governor of one of the most important swing states, if not the most important in terms of electoral college tally. And it's also one of the most evenly divided states between Republicans, Democrats, of course, with a large number of independents in there. And a lot of people thought that he was going to be the shoo-in for Kamala Harris's running mate. And I think it would have been a very different result. Maybe not a win for the Democrats if he'd have been Kamala Harris's running mate. But,
well, he would have been, at the very least, he would have been an asset as opposed to the liability that Tim Walz became.
But the reason that he wasn't picked, and it flies against all political logic unless you assume that he wasn't picked because he's pro-Israeli and a Jew.
Mm-hmm. I think it's unavoidable. It's an unavoidable conclusion considering the state of the party, where the far left stands in terms of Hamas versus Israel or Palestinians versus Israel. There was an incredible fear among the Democrats of offending their radical base. So when you have 20% of the country or 20% even of your own base that you're pandering to, the other 80% are left out in the cold. And that's what happened to them in 2024.
Yeah, that's not an issue that's going away, though, I think. I mean,
certainly not.
So here's and this is really just prognostication, which you probably shouldn't engage in, but I think that Josh Shapiro would have a very good chance of winning the presidency, but I think he has almost zero chance of winning the Democratic primary. Just because, as you point out, there are a lot of people, and this isn't going away, especially not while the war continues over there, who say, well, he's in favor of Israel, therefore he supports genocide of the Palestinian people. Can you have a supporter of genocide heading up the party? And now who's going to be saying that? Well, it's the loudest voices in the party. And we know the names. They're the Justice Democrats, right? Your AOCs, your Premier Jayapals, your Bernie Sanders to some extent as well. And they're going to be hammering that message home because they're not losing their power. They're in very, very safe positions, and they're going to still be making the noise going into the race. So, yep, I don't think I think Josh Shapiro might have a very, very difficult time getting to the top of that ticket.
Well, I remember in 2016 when John Kasich ran against Donald Trump, he was one of like 10 or 12 competitors against Trump. And he kept making the claim, well, look, I may not be able to win the Republican nomination, but I'm definitely a better candidate in the general election than Trump is. So therefore, you should support me. But I think it's a bridge too far to say if you can't even satisfy your own party that you can win the presidency, although I would agree that Shapiro would be a relatively attractive general election candidate. There's no question about it. He's popular among Republicans, Democrats, and independents in Pennsylvania with an approval rating hovering around 60%. That's impressive.
That's, as Donald Rumsfeld said, that's not nothing. That is not nothing.
That's a known.
It's a known. We're going to be back after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.